Hey guys. Nose is itchy. Oh, that means no one's stopping by my house tonight. We're doing 3D molds. Gonna give it a few minutes for, hey Mona, a few minutes for people to hop on. Everybody having a good week so far? This week's been weird. I'm already ready for it to be over, personally. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and then anybody that hops on here in a bit, it won't take much to catch them up. So this is my first successful 3D mold that I poured. I do have some trial ones that I'll show you as I'm talking about tips and things like that. So these are just little grippies, and so that comes from this silicone mold from Kirsten. I've never actually said her last name out loud. Arbach? I apologize, Kirsten, if you're watching this. But I always say Kirsten and not Kristen, though, so I feel like that maybe gives me bonus points for not knowing how to pronounce your last name. But she's in the group. She has her own group, glitter molds and more with Kirsten. Hey Angie. But that's where I purchased this, and then got the little potter head too. So she orders blanks and pours these fun, look, it's sparkly, these fun molds. So these are the first ones that I purchased and tried. So I do have one that is partially done because it is a two-step process. So this has been sitting, waiting. So I've already mixed my epoxy, and I mixed it about 20 minutes ago. Now, I like a Kirsten and a Kristen. That's a battle the two of you can hatch out. Kristen. So I do mix and then pour in, and I let it sit for a little bit, get any bubbles out of it. But another reason is because for for these molds, it's, well, for some of them, especially like this one with all those little parts in, it's better for it to be thicker. You'll have to agree to disagree. So the first time that I poured this mold, I did not let it sit for very long. And so my approach was to pour into these larger sections and then let it fill up. So in my mind, letting it fill up, it'd be thin, it would self-level. But because these were narrower, I ended up with bubbles that I saw that had to go back and pop. What cool trick did you learn for bubbles? Oh, yeah. Yes, it's not the heat that pops your bubbles, it's carbon. So if you exhale, then they'll pop. Yeah, a lot of times, especially with the molds, because it's not really good for some of these molds to apply a lot of heat, especially if you use a torch instead of a heat gun, which I use a heat gun, so I personally have never had issues, and I don't get it really close. But a lot of times people will get really, really close to their molds and it'll melt, and you might not see it melting, but it might melt underneath, and then when you go to pull, after it's cured, you go to pull it, it won't pull up, and you'll end up ripping part of your mold. It's the same reason that some people will apply heat, too much heat, and too closely to a tumbler with epoxy, trying to pop bubbles or anything like that, and then they end up with these really bad bare spots on it from where they heated it too much. And it's because, like you said, it's not really the heat that's popping it, it's air, carbon. Your carbon dioxide works really well. I use from time to time little coffee stirrers, because it's smaller, but any sort of straw, anything like that, if there's not too many of them, and depending upon where you're trying to blow the air, you can just literally lean over and blow on it. But yeah, thank you, Angie. So yes, so the first time I was going, hey, let's keep it thin and see if it will fill in, self-level into those little spots. And it didn't do a horrible job, but there were a couple places, like I said, that were really small around here that I did have to go back through and still had to push the epoxy to fill the mold. So that part is just going to be dependent on your mold. When I went through and did this one, I let it thicken and I pressed into it, which is the technique I'm going to be showing you, and it was a lot faster, a lot simpler in my opinion for this mold, and I didn't have any issues with air pockets or bubbles forming. But you do need to make sure that you are getting epoxy into all the little areas. So any of the molds that are really small, for example, Mr. Pata here, these are really small areas, and I will show you later. When I put it in, I actually move the mold a little bit, because if you don't, and if you are not making sure that you are pressing and filling these small areas completely, then you will have issues. So I had some that I thought was all good, but as you can see on my first Mr. Pata, I'm just saying, you know, Harry, his glasses were always broken, and Hermione always had to repair his glasses. with, Reparo. So this was an especially rough Quidditch tournament that Mr. Potter just finished up, and his glasses are broken, and Hermione hasn't come to his aid yet. That's my story about this one. Yes, so, but I am going to be showing you how I apply to both of these. And then after we do that, I'll show you my step 2, and we will pour for Mr. Potter's face, which, oh, I need to get my glitter for that. I didn't grab that one down. Okay. Any questions before we get started? I'm going to bend you down so you are all super nice. Actually, I know I'm gonna mix first because I think you're gonna be too close for me to mix. I'm going to put my glitter in first. I apologize. So I've got one little medicine cup here. So I'm going to do the poison apple first. I'm using Reagan's Illness from the glitter guy. First one I used was ectoplasm, which I do like. But this is ectoplasm. This is the Reagan's Illness that I'm using. So I am going to, I'll hold it up so you can see. I put a lot of glitter in. You want your epoxy thick and a lot of glitter in, because if you've ever poured glitter molds or used glitter in your epoxy with molds before, especially chunkies, you know that glitter settles. So it will settle, it may move and adjust some, and if you don't have a good enough ratio in your glitter, then you're gonna end up with bare spots, like in this one. So you can see, you can really see through it. And from this side, see around the edges, there's places where you can really, you can see my hand moving. You can see my finger right here behind it. That's because I did not put enough glitter in the red the first time either. Excuse me. So I always start with some, mix it, and then if you're still seeing a whole bunch of swirls, you need to mix more. And then if you keep seeing them, then probably want to add some more glitter. So I'm going to add just a teensy bit more. It's weird stirring like this. I'm short. And then for my Harry Potter hair and glasses, I am using Onyx from our super awesome affiliate, Blue Spring Designs. And I'm gonna see if you can see this. So when I'm mixing in here, it's starting to kind of clump up as I mix it. And to me, that's going, mwah, good consistency. I'm gonna be able to smash this down where I need it. It's got a good amount of glitter in it. I'm pleased. Think of it kind of like using a stand mixer to mix dough. You know, it's right there when all the dough starts moving around in that ball with the beaters. At least that's how I think of it. Okay. All right, now I've got them mixed, so I'm gonna point you down. This is our 2-layer molds with epoxy. So silicone molds, 2 layers. Alright, let me refresh my computer real quick and make sure I've got it up, because I'm not going to be able to see comments on here. Oh, that's fun. My computer's frozen. Hold, please. Sorry, I don't want to. Oh. I bet it's actually my mouse that's batteries have died. Okay. I'm terrible. I've got wireless mouse and I'm terrible about not actually turning it off. Going to point you down now. Okay. So I use toothpicks because they're also really great with that little point for directing silicone into these smaller sizes, smaller areas, but they do also make reusable silicone stir sticks that are really small. You can also use, and I actually will be using it later, also use popsicle sticks. This is going to be really helpful on our Harry Potter one. Okay, so I start in the larger areas first. Because you also want to make sure that you're not overfilling. So I start in one area, make sure it gets to the edges, and then let it kind of level out with that spot. Now if some gets on there, it's fine. You'll be able to do some cleanup later. But try not to. So here, so then it's a small spot. I kind of pull it apart and then let my epoxy go in there, release it, and then again, let it kind of self-level a little bit before I pour more. So again, I like doing this because I can wrap it around and then I can let it drip off. Hey, Misty. We're just putting the first layer in. So here's another one. I want to pull it back to make sure it gets all the way down there. And then make sure it's in my edges. Okay. There's also, see, there's a little one right over here. Just gonna put a little bit of epoxy in there. And I'm actually just gonna kind of scrape it off into there. So it really helps to examine your molds ahead of time. Really check them out. Yes, toothpick. It's really been helping me for this mold, especially with those drips. First time I did not use it, and there's a lot of scraping involved. I really like just letting it drip on there. I think it helps prevent bubbles, but the fact that the epoxy is thicker as well, I think helps. Oh, you haven't been living your life all wrong, I promise. Oh yeah, I bet those tiny little flamingo legs. Man. So I'm going to start back here and again pull it apart, let it drip. So just make sure that it goes all the way to the edge. Just another little spot through there. So it's okay, just kind of pull this stuff around. It's silicone, you're not gonna break it just by bending it. And then, so see where I did that, I kind of covered up the top there, but I want to make sure that it's red, so I'm just going to go back with this and just kind of scrape it off, and it'll be fine. All right, there's another tricky one back here. The molds I got from Kirsten Arbach. Again, I apologize if that is totally not the right way to say your name, Kirsten, if you watch this. I think it's in the events. If not, I know I posted, when I posted images asking if y'all wanted to see a live on this, I tagged her page, but I'll add that information after the live is over. The last little area, make sure that gets filled, and then I'll go back and scrape off. All right. So when I say I'll go back and scrape off, here's why. So you just want to make sure that it's filled up to this second layer, not past it, because if it's filled past it, then there'd be little green spots in front of the red. So you do not want your first color to be on top of this upper layer here at all. So as you are able to, after you pour, if you have any covering, just go back with something kind of flat and scrape any excess epoxy off. Now, if you don't get it all, that's fine, because I'll show you what you can do afterwards. She does have a website though. That I don't know exactly what the website information is offhand. I just always get there through her page. But yes, she does have a website. So that is step one. So I'm going to place this on a level surface. And because I craft in the garage, which is where my dogs and my dog crates are, and the laundry and all sorts of stuff, I put a small Tupperware container on top of it. Step 2. So, or mold 2. So I'm going to start with the hair. It's a lot easier on this one because there's not a lot of little areas. You just got to make sure that you get it into little points. So these, just kind of pour it out, you can drag it around. But there are there are several places that have 3D these 2-layer 3D molds, and a lot of these tips can still be useful for the flatter molds as well, if you've got any that just have these small little areas too. I know there was a thread, I don't remember where it was on, that we were talking about a few different places that had them, that had different molds. I think we've got Priscilla that's here in the group too, and she has lots of the 3D molds and shakers as well. I haven't been able to purchase any of hers yet. I've got some on the way from Bare Essentials. She used to just do tumbler cuts, but now she's got some like sequin shapes, some tools, and some molds. Alright, so we've got the hair. Here's a tricky part. So, like I said, I'm just gonna get a little bit, and then I'm gonna put it just right on there. But then what I'm going to do is I'm gonna use this because it's wide and flat, and I'm going to press this epoxy into it because it's so thin. Really can't pull it apart with all of this too. So I'm going to use it and really just press that in. And then you can use the same thing and go back and kind of scrape. It is more important that you get these areas filled with the epoxy and glitter than it is to keep this surface clean for these. So then again, I'm just gonna take it, kind of poke it down in here as I can. See, the bottom area here, it's easier for me to pull it apart some. The first time that I did it, all I did was try to pull it apart, and then I just scraped off excess, and it kind of looked like it was full, but they were not. So then take, and it's not just a scraping motion like this, it's a pressing motion that I'm doing. So first time I go through, and I want to make sure that I can see that there is black glitter all over it. And then after that, I want to go over and make sure that it's full. And then as I go, you know, again, scrape, scrape, scrape. There we go. So when I'm happy with it, that it's all filled, then, like I said, I'm going to go through, and after that, it is scraping only. You don't want to press too hard, though, on this one, because you don't want to press and then end up getting some of the epoxy that you just put down in there back off or back out. So maybe you're more magical than me, but I cannot get all of it off, and it varies. And I will go I will come back after about an hour or so, and I will come back with another toothpick, because all of these are going to form kind of small little beads, and it's going to be tacky. And then I'm going to be able to take my toothpick, kind of stab the tacky areas on here on the top, and just kind of rotate and pull, and I'm going to be able to get even more of that off than I can now. It's the advantage of it being sticky. Sticky epoxy normally is not your friend, but I did that on, I think it was this one, and man, stuff came off, and it was pretty darn cool. Are there any questions about layer number 1? And my computer just restarted. All right, no questions. So, moving on. So here is my cured one. Oh, thanks, Kim. I try to make things as easy as possible. For y'all, but also for myself. So as you can see on this one, when I went back after it was tacky, there are still a few areas here that have now cured epoxy. So I'm just gonna take my tool, whatever weeding tool you have works well. And I'm just gonna go and gently kind of scrape, not really gonna stab, but just kind of scrape and loosen all of these up. Make sure you're checking around the edges for any clumps, any little strings, like there's one right here. It's a little string, and then it's just gonna pop it right off. So you can clean up the bottom and the sides if you need to. And then I'm just gonna scrape them out, and then got a baby wipe. My nail. You know, any means necessary. Okay. Now, I've had people ask, and I've seen people ask, do you have to actually wait for the first layer to cure before you pour the second one? Not necessarily. If you just want to let it sit for a couple hours, think of it as the same premise as doing a flood coat on a tumbler. I want to make sure this is good tacky. They're not gonna, are good, well beyond tacky. It's not gonna move. If you can do this and you can see it start moving, don't pour your second layer. But yes, I mean, you, as long as it is firm and is not going to move around, you don't have to wait until the next day. You don't have to wait 8 hours. You know, depending upon your epoxy, you can wait for however many hours. Okay. So I am going to epoxy in here. And this, I'm just using Recollections Champagne. Using this up. And mix. Because this is going all over. Just dump it in the middle. And then spread. Yours normally would not be quite this thick because you would have poured this separately. But see, even thick, it works just fine. And this is Counterculture epoxy, so I know it's gonna level out real nice. Just wanna make sure that you're not creating any bubbles. Need a bit more epoxy. Side. And I have melted epoxy, or melty epoxy all over my hands. Alright, well, this is basically it, guys. And I'm gonna set this on a real level surface. Make sure that I'm not getting any dog hair or dust or gnats in here. And then tomorrow morning I can pop this bad boy out. And then tomorrow afternoon, because I'm not gonna do it in the morning before work. I'll demold stuff before work, but I don't normally pour molds before work. I can come back and pour these second layers. On this one, while I clean up the mold edges, I'll do the same thing that I was talking about on this one. I may come back later, but I let everything level first. I never worry too much about the very back edges, because I just go through and I'll sand anything down. There was, I think it was on this side here of this one, there's a little bit, but it pops right off. Or I'll use my Dremel with this little thing, and I can get all up in the edges, the little small areas. But yeah, it's just scraping and moving it around. Anytime that there's epoxy on the silicone, when you move it around, what I found is 9 times out of 10, I mean, even if I were to take this and do that, there's still a little bit that's on there. The attachment, I have no idea what this is called. I just got it from Lowe's. That's my little pointy one. I think it came in like a 2-pack in the tool section. This one, and then a slightly larger one. You're welcome. Yeah, they just come, they're in like these little blister packs that are about that big. I'm not technically inclined when it comes to tools. So see, even now, me going back just with this, a lot more is coming up because it's getting stuck. A lot more is coming off. And then when I do come back, I also check out and see if there's anywhere else I may need to put a little bit more. Like right there, right here, there's a little spot where the epoxy leveled out and that emptied. So I'm going to put a little bit more in there. Press it down. So that will happen if they don't get filled all the way. Or it will happen if your mold is not level. My countertop right here is not 100% level. So because that's where it's been sitting over here and not in my super level spot where I normally let them dry, that could have been that could also have been one of the reasons that that little spot popped up. Or I just didn't have it filled all the way, or maybe there's an air bubble in there, something like that. Yeah, I like the little Dremel tool. It's worked well for me because I even used it in that little area right there, right in there, just at an angle, and I was able because I had a little bit of the epoxy that came to like here for that gold layer. Any other questions? I hope this was helpful. Well, I always hope it's helpful. Oh, you're very much, Kim. You're welcome very much, Kim. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and flip you so I can see again. Since my computer restarted, I was craning my neck down to read the comments. Now I'm going to pour the rest into my skulls that I found. Alright guys, well, if there's no other questions, I'm gonna hop off here. If you are watching this no longer live on the replay, make sure to throw down your hashtag replay there. But comment, ask any questions that you have. I'll do my best to answer them as timely as possible for you. Other than that, thank you for tuning in. I hope everybody has a good rest of your evening. I'm going to try not to procrastinate on cutting decals any longer. Hashtag the struggle is real. Alright guys, bye.